Hello, everybody. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to call you Oliver because that's what you
Please do.
said to call you. Just a little bit about Oliver, in case you guys haven't heard of him. Oliver is the mayor for South Yorkshire. He's born and bred in South Yorkshire and was a really important part of getting Hope for the Future off the ground when we started. He was a real advocate and has been an advocate of our work over the past 10 years. So we're just going to talk for 20 minutes a little bit about how climate change and nature involves in Oliver's work, and also how he engages with constituents on that and more widely. So can we just start? Would you tell us a little bit about how you got into politics and your journey into who you are now?
It was a series of bad life choices that led me to this place. No, it was, I mean, look, I've been involved in politics all my life, so I started leafleting for the Labour Party when I was 6 years old on Broome Grove Road. My dad used to pay me 20p a round of leaflets, which I was slave labour in my view, and then basically went from there. So kind of did politics A-level, did politics at university, studied politics and parliamentary studies at the University of Leeds, which as a course allowed they send you to America. So I worked as an intern for the leader of the Democrats at the time, a guy called Dick Gephardt, and then went to Parliament and was an intern down there, doing the very important job of photocopying, important role in politics, and opening the letters. And through that, then got a job here, working for one of the local MPs, Meg Munn, and stood for Parliament 2015, which is when I first came across Hope for the Future, and lost when I ran against Nick Clegg by a couple of thousand votes. And then I stood to be an MP over in Brightside and Hillsborough, and I lost. And then I ran the referendum campaign to keep us in Europe, and I lost. So then I took a break from politics, which I think was a sensible decision, and then moved back home because I was living in London for a bit, and this came up, and frankly felt like a bit of a dream job to be able to live and work in South Yorkshire, to be able to be involved in politics in South Yorkshire, to be able to influence how people live and work and travel and experience South Yorkshire, which is, as you say, is my home and I care about deeply, is really a dream job for me. So feel very lucky to be in this role, especially as devolution is unfolding, and hopefully giving people like me more power and ability to be able to actually change things and how they work in our region.
Great, thank you. We talked a little bit about this at the beginning of kind of the fact that it's a fairly new role being a mayor and people are still trying to figure out quite what that means. How often do you hear from constituents about kind of climate and nature things, topics, issues related or just specifically climate and nature? And is that kind of more or less than you expected, a bigger or a smaller part of your current role?
I'd probably say it's not as big a part of my role as I hoped it would be, or still hope it will be. I think as a nation, as a world at this point, if you look at what's happening in America in particular, I think it is to our detriment that climate action conversations around that transition are not necessarily where they were even 5 or 10 years ago. And so we've tried to do some of that through the MCA. People will probably know that we've run a citizens' assembly, biggest regional citizens' assembly in the country, 100 people involved in that, which for anyone that knows, Citizens' Assembly is a very big Citizens' Assembly to run, cost £250,000. We've done a load of work on tree planting, on the next generation of energy in particular. So we're doing a load of work in terms of hydrogen, small modular nuclear reactor technology in South Yorkshire, a bunch of other things besides. So we're trying to do a lot of that work. I know there is passion out there, not least clearly people in this room. But from my perspective, it isn't as high up the agenda as I would like it to be. And I don't say that because I'm not passionate about trying to solve some of those problems in our region, but it doesn't feel like the conversation nationally and internationally is where it needs to be at this point in time.
Thank you for that. So obviously, hopefully all of you know this, but Hope for the Future are all about getting people to engage with their politicians and communities, to be listened to by their politicians and heard for what they care about. How does that kind of come into your work, the kind of things you hear from communities and individuals? How does that influence the work you do and the way you do that work?
So can I guess I probably want to have a slightly bigger starting point, which is to say, I think the argument for devolution previously, the devolution agenda that started under the new Labour government, where the Scottish Parliament, the Welsh Parliaments were created, there was a conversation obviously at one point about regional assemblies, was largely about identity. So it was about recognising that places like Scotland and Wales had unique identities and recognising those identities through national parliaments. And then we got the kind of second wave of devolution, which has been about city regions and about recognising that actually places that are closer to the decisions that they are making and the communities they serve can make better decisions about public money and spend it more effectively and make change happen more swiftly. That's kind of the argument for second wave devolution. I think we're now in third wave devolution, and I'd like to think we're at the forefront of third wave devolution, which is to say that it's actually about agency. So it's about communities recognising that in place here in South Yorkshire there are 1.4 million of us, and previously we would have had to look to Westminster for every decision that we wanted to take that was substantial. Obviously we've got a council, but largely been hollowed out by austerity in our councils. But now what we have is a mayor, and that mayor, me, for now, certainly, hopefully for a bit longer, lives here, I work here, this is my home, I catch the bus, I get on the tram, I use the trains, I have family who go to the local schools, I have friends who use local hospitals, I use them myself, etc., right? So I understand those challenges and opportunities in a different way, and I live those experiences every single day, and I am therefore, I hope, more responsive to those things because I am here. And that agency, for me, is what's been missing, at least for a while now, in our communities, because they have been hollowed out by austerity, because we have seen local government largely bypassed by central government. We have seen some of those institutions which have given our communities previously power, things like trade unions, things like strong workplaces, things like public institutions like libraries and parks, places where people can congregate for free and not have any responsibility to pay for anything. Those are largely going or gone. So I think this is a reaction to that in some ways, hopefully, and a corollary and a way of fixing some of those problems, because it means that we've now got somebody who can actually be here helping our communities to have that sense of agency that I think collectively we have lost.
I wonder if you've got like an example of that, where you've worked with a community or experienced something as someone who lives locally and shares that experience with those people. Yeah. Maybe specifically on a climate and nature issue, if you can think of one.
I mean, trees are a good example. So I know, living in South Yorkshire, we're really lucky in Sheffield, right? We've got loads of trees in Sheffield. Not necessarily in the city centre, but otherwise one of the most densely populated places in the whole of Europe when it comes to trees. But across the rest of Yorkshire, South Yorkshire, not so much. Look at Doncaster, it's actually quite deprived when it comes to tree cover. So I've now committed, said, look, 1.4 million trees will be planted under me as mayor. I'm not going to plant them all personally, but 1.4 million trees. We've already started that project. I think we've planted 100,000 already. And that's one tree for every single person that lives here. And that's a response to knowing Doncaster, driving through Doncaster, spending time in Doncaster, talking to people from Doncaster. Now, with the best will in the world, in Westminster, the Secretary of State for DEFRA, Steve, doesn't know that we don't have enough trees in Doncaster. He might have a kind of grand plan for tree planting or nature recovery, but tree planting is a specific thing that I'm keen to do in Doncaster, indeed across the rest of South Yorkshire, because I know there are specific challenges. And that's about understanding your place. And that's what we're able to do here through the mayoralty, through the MCA, in a way which I think previously has been much harder.
Just switching a little bit to thinking about the constituents specifically. You know, a lot of people, we talk to constituents all the time who find it really daunting talking to a politician, from a councillor to a mayor to an MP, whatever it might be. Have you got any kind of things that you would say to a constituent that wants to engage, how they can do that more impactfully, more confidently, more effectively?
Yeah, well, I mean, first and foremost, I don't think there's any reason anybody should ever be kind of intimidated by speaking to me. I hope not, at least. You know, I'm just a person who lives in South Yorkshire who happens to put himself forward for a job. I'm very lucky to do my job, but I'm no different to anyone else that lives here. You know, I get parking tickets, I forget to pay my phone bill, I do lots of things. You know, we all live our lives very, you know, similarly. I'm no different to anybody else. I'm not some sort of special person because I happen to have a job title that says mayor. So if you've got a problem, come and talk to me. It sometimes frustrates me, I have to say. We funded a project, so I won't give the details because it's unfair to the people involved, but we funded a project a couple of years ago, and great project. They came to see us and said, look, we really need some help. We want to get this project off the ground. It wasn't a climate project. It was a cultural project. And we funded it. It's going well. And then another cultural project came to us and said, why didn't you fund us? Why did you fund them? So, well, because they asked. And it was a simple, like, look, I'm not playing favourites here, right? If you have an issue, you want to talk to me, come and talk to me. It might be harder sometimes to get in my diary, etc., because I'm really busy and things are difficult. But, you know, I come and do things like this. I was just saying, I go on the radio every month and I answer calls from everybody and anybody who wants to ring in and ask me a question. And there's no filtering of that. You know, BBC Radio Sheffield will put you on air if you want to ask me something, if you want to put me on the spot, if you want to come to one of our mayor's question times and ask me a question, come and ask, come and, you know, speak to me in Tesco's. Like, I'm here. This is my job. I am responsible for helping people. That is ultimately the heart of my role. But I only get that opportunity if you ask me for that help or tell me that you need help. And that's how this system should work. So there is no reason why anybody shouldn't come and say, can you please help me do something? Sometimes I'll say no, because I can't help, or it's more appropriate that somebody else can help. But I will try always to find a way to help in some way, shape or form. So come and talk to me is all I would say. Secondly, I would probably say there are different ways of engaging with politicians. And look, I would say this probably because I am a politician and I've been both a politician and not a politician. So I've probably seen it from both sides. I've tried to engage with politicians. And I think what I now know as a politician, when you come and even if you want to tell me that I'm doing something wrong, which is, you know, you're all perfectly entitled to do, and I'm sure you all think there are things that we could be doing better or differently, and that's absolutely right. And I probably agree with you on some of them. But some people come and they say, you're doing that wrong, and you need to do that better, and I'm sick of you doing that wrong, and I'm going to harass you about it and call you an idiot until you understand that I'm right and you're wrong. And look, that's one way of engaging with a politician. But genuinely, honestly, I'm a human being like everybody else. And the best way to get my attention is to come and say, look, can I have a conversation with you about X? And this is what I know is the problem. This is how I think you could maybe engage with that better. And I can see you might not be kind of thinking in that way, but can I just talk to you about why I think that's important and have a conversation with me as a human being rather than assuming, as some people do, that I'm somehow doing this with nefarious or intent or because I'm cynical about an issue or because I don't care. Sometimes I just don't have the resources, right? Sometimes I just don't have the capacity to be able to do the thing that I would like to do and you would like me to do. But if you engage me in a conversation, I'm always happy to talk about what those things look like, why we are doing something, why we aren't doing something, or if we've got it wrong, to put my hands up and say, yeah, okay, I understand that, and let's try and change it.
That's really encouraging to hear, because if any of you have been to our training or anything like that, you know, we talk all the time about 3D politicians, that they're not just one thing and they're complex and multifaceted and human. So thank you for saying that, because it makes us sound like we're saying the right things, which is great.
You know what you're talking about.
Just thinking about kind of hearing from those people, I'm sure you hear from people who have different opinions too. People will come and say, we really want this project to happen. We don't want this project to happen. We want you to spend more here, less here. How do you hear all of those opinions and listen to them and value them, but ultimately make a decision that is going to make some of those people unhappy and support some of those people? How does that processing go?
Well, so partly, for instance, through things like citizens' assemblies. I think it's really important as a mayor that I have a much more direct relationship with our community. It's why I come and do things like this, why I'm always happy to take questions. If anybody wants to ask me a question, more than happy to answer it. Why I do the radio show, why I go and do Mayor's Question Time, et cetera, because actually that live debate and conversation helps inform my thinking on any number of issues. And the direct democracy that comes through a citizens' assembly was also really important in coming up with a number of resolutions around climate that are helping shape our thinking about what we want to do next. But can I just get into what is potentially quite tricky territory, which is to say this question is a very live one when it comes to Doncaster Sheffield Airport. And I say that knowing who I'm speaking to right now. I've said I believe passionately in climate being an issue that we need to face down as an issue, probably the biggest issue of our time. And we've had an airport closed in South Yorkshire that we collectively, myself included, as kind of one of the political leaders in South Yorkshire, are trying to reopen. And I've had it asked of me, you believe in climate, is it not hypocritical to try and reopen an airport? And the truth is that in my job, I have to try and balance a number of different responsibilities. And one of those big responsibilities is to create jobs and growth in South Yorkshire. Another one of my responsibilities is to try and sustainably grow the economy and help us all to get through that climate transition in the best possible way. And I'm constantly trying to balance that responsibility in the best way I know how, which is by being honest and upfront and accountable and transparent in all of the decisions that we make, which is why I'm constantly on the telly and on the radio talking about these things and acknowledging that they're hard, because they are, and I'm not perfect, and I don't presume to have the answer to all of these questions. But when I say we're going to try and reopen an airport, what I'm talking about is we're also going to build a sustainable aviation hub, hopefully a world-leading one, which helps people to then fly more sustainably, not just in South Yorkshire, but worldwide. In South Yorkshire, we've powered the first transatlantic flight that was net zero through the University of Sheffield's work. And SAF, Sustainable Aviation Fuels, are going to be a small part of the solution to flying more sustainably. We've also got a facility run by Boeing, which is doing research into composites, which help planes to be more lightweight and therefore less carbon intensive. We've got a company called Hybrid Air Vehicles that we're trying to support and, forgive the pun, get off the ground in South Yorkshire, sorry about that, which will reduce the carbon impact of flight by about 92%. So I'm not just saying, look, let's fly and let's all bugger the climate and forget, any kind of responsibility we might have. I'm saying we've got to try and balance these things, because regardless of what we do in South Yorkshire, people are going to be flying in South Yorkshire from South Yorkshire. They are, whether you like it or not, that's the truth. My job is to try and balance those things. So we have an airport, yes, that we do that responsibly, and we try and solve the problem that the world faces when it comes to aviation. Now, some people in this room, as I am saying that, will disagree with me vehemently, and that's okay, as long as we do that respectfully and have that conversation. And if you disagree with me and you don't think I'm right and you're right, then come and have that conversation with me. Ultimately, if you want to, stand against me in an election, because that's how democracy works. And that's what I'm trying to do always, is be respectful of those different competing opinions and not simply imprint my view on our community. Because I'm not a narcissist. I don't believe I've got all the answers that we need. I have values and I have principles, but ultimately I'm here to respect and relate to my community and be in conversation with my community as I try and make the best decision I can for the whole of the community.
Thank you for that. I'm sure some of you might be getting in touch with Oliver to share your thoughts, but it's really,
Absolutely.
it's great to hear that this is kind of an honest and transparent thought process behind that, and you're representing the community that you work for. We've probably just got time for like one more question, and then we'll wrap up. But just ending on a positive note, can you think of maybe what the most rewarding part of advocating for your community has been so far, in a climate and nature way, or just generally, and why that's been so rewarding, if there's one that jumps to mind?
I mean, the programme that I'm proudest of, and it's not climate, but is Beds for Babies. That's a scheme that we've put in place in South Yorkshire. It's a pioneering scheme nationally, where we're funding a guarantee for children under 5 to have a safe place to sleep, a guaranteed safe place to sleep. So 1 in 10 children go home from Sheffield or Jessop's when they're born without a safe place to sleep, so without a bed, a cot, a Moses basket. And we guarantee for every child under 5 that they can access that now across the whole of the South Yorkshire for the next 4 years. So I'm proud of that, and that was a scheme we came up with, like I say, because we were closest to our community. We knew that was a problem, and we were able to fund it. So really proud of that. I think more broadly speaking, I'm just really proud that we are now able to be in a place where there is somebody like me, and I'm not saying I'm doing a perfect job by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm proud that we have the opportunity now, with a mayor, with devolution, with a government, hopefully they're going to listen to us on those big questions about how we want to take our economy, our community, our society forward. And I have the opportunity to reflect that back to them about our opportunities, our challenges, and our needs and our wants and our hopes for the future. There we go. See that what I did there? And that for me is a unique moment in time that we should absolutely try and exploit, because I don't know how long it lasts. Hopefully, from my perspective, maybe not yours, we have a Labour government in perpetuity, possibly unlikely. But for now, we have a government that is listening to us, and I hope that we exploit that opportunity to its fullest extent, because I think it is going to make a huge difference to how we live our lives here in South Yorkshire.
Great, thank you. I think that's all the questions we've got time for. It's really great to hear some of the kind of key themes that are coming through there about how important it is to engage with your communities, how for communities it's so important to go and speak to your politicians and tell them how you think and feel, even if you think it is different to how they think and feel. And just the power of community politician interaction in shaping the future of South Yorkshire, but also mayoral regions across the country and hopefully more widely too.